This, coupled with lots of other things, in my opinion, erasing black history from lots of things in our history as a total. Political consultants like me, you can say it's right or wrong, but I will use this to try to get some of our black voters and immigrant voters and children of immigrants back voting this way, because here
we see with this rollback from this administration just falls in line with a lot of things that we saw post George Floyd. A lot of companies, a lot of celebrities, people putting up the black squares, all that jazz. Knew it was performative then.
If Democrats had allowed those reforms to go to the floor for a vote, we may actually have a police reform package, but they filibustered it. They filibustered that bill and one of the sticking points.
You know what we were arguing? You as a police officer, you have a lot of power. You want to hold everybody else accountable, but you don't want anybody else holding you accountable. That to me is a scary prospect, especially when you have people.
So, you know, to me, this is another veiled political message of just going against one side of the country in support of these messages.
Oh, and then
it's all veiled.
And then the bad optics of doing this right after this Ashley Babbitt settlement.
As standing with their supporters. I mean, go back to the campaign.
Except for if they
and
storm the Capitol.
you had a flood of...
Hello, everybody. Guys, let's get right into this segment. If it couldn't be any more clear who the Republican Party is, check this segment out. And I have something to say that no one is really talking about. Check this out and we'll talk about it.
This Sunday marks 5 years since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. The world watched the tragedy unfold as bystander video showed Floyd begging for his life, with Chauvin kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Floyd's death sparked national outrage, international outrage even, and prompted police reforms in Minneapolis to prevent this from ever happening again. But this week, the Trump administration announced it will end federal oversight of those reforms and that it will drop investigations into several major police departments, including Minneapolis. Earlier today, I spoke with Philonise Floyd, the brother of George Floyd. Here's what he had to say.
He sat on my brother's neck like my brother was a piece of an animal or something like that was out there. He just did what he wanted to do, and you can see it in his eyes that he didn't care. And so many people seen that. And the fact still stands that we need people to hold police accountable. That's the bottom line. I understand police, they have to do their job, but also you have to have respect for others. And at the end of the day, it's not just my family. You got to think about Breonna Taylor. You got to think about Ahmaud Arbery. You got to think about Eric Garner. You got to think about Stephon Clark. You got to think about so much, because just being around all these families, I don't want to be a part of this. You know, I think about Tyre Nicholas every day. I think about what his mother is going through. I think about what happened to any individual who lost their loved one due to this. I'm going to constantly think about that, because it's a lot of people who wake up every day and don't know what's going to go on in the world that we live in today.
Stacey, I want to talk to you about this because you're the attorney at the table. You know, when you look at this, I guess what people are looking at here is saying, well, who then watches the watchers? Because the federal government had put a consent decree that was agreed upon by the police department there. I've spoken to the mayor. The mayor says, look, we are going forward with the reforms. The police department is going forward with the reforms. But in some cases, with the federal government sort of backing off, it sort of says to the police department, you do you.
Yeah, the Trump Justice Department saying, we're not going to go forward with these anymore, even though these are court-approved agreements to monitor police departments all over the country who were under investigation or who were allegedly engaged in misconduct, police misconduct. So what's the harm of keeping the oversight in place? It's absurd to withdraw it at this point. I don't really see any reason why the government would need to back away from this, other than to make a veiled statement that I'm going to side on the police's side. It's not a good message to the public. And the Trump administration is arguing that this isn't necessary anymore, and these consent decrees are monitored by these outside third parties, and these people who are monitoring it are anti-police, and we don't want those kind of people around. And the police are very happy about this because they believe the consent decrees are making relations difficult with the local population, because it's putting a stigma on the police department that they're corrupt and they need to be monitored. But what's the point of not keeping a monitor on something that's moving along? So there's extra oversight. As long as the police are behaving, what's the difference if somebody's watching over them or not? Everything is working properly. So why not have a little extra protection considering all of the incidents that have been occurring across the country over these past few years involving alleged police misconduct?
Chuck, what's the message? What is the message being
Look,
sent
I
by
am
the
not a
Trump
lawyer,
administration?
but I have hired a lot of lawyers. And I'll tell you this for a fact, is that we should mention that with this going on, that black voters, Latino voters voted Democratic. But Donald Trump performed better with those two demographics than any Republican in history. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of frustration in the community. But this, coupled with lots of other things, in my opinion, erasing black history from lots of things in our history as a total. Political consultants like me, you can say it's right or wrong, but I will use this to try to get some of our black voters and immigrant voters and children of immigrants back voting this way, because they voted for him not because of this. They were frustrated about economic needs and other things, right? But this draws a clear line in my business, which is just about contrast, to sometimes we do it to a fault and we do it too much. We should look for a lot more things that bring us together, but this is something that's really different.
Yeah, so I'll say that this is something that I reported on this. I've been reporting on this for years on the issue of consent decrees. The Republican Party and conservatives, well before Donald Trump, have been against consent decrees. If you go and look at the number of consent decrees around the country, most people, when they think of consent decrees, they think of police. Well, consent decrees are actually with local governments, cities and everything, they're agreed upon. And I think the overwhelming majority of them are not dealing, like the consent decrees aren't dealing with police. If Democrats, and this is something that I've talked about, and in fact, if you guys want to go and watch Jamil's podcast, we did a podcast.
Yes, my YouTube channel.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we did.
And I just want to point this out. Now, while you're right that some cities are going to continue to do exactly what they do as far as reforms, if the Democrats were serious about police reform, they would have voted in favor or allowed the Justice Act, which was the Republicans' component to police reform in June of 2020, which was introduced by Tim Scott. It had the support of every single senator, Republican senator in Congress. If Democrats had allowed those reforms to go to the floor for a vote, we may actually have a police reform package, but they filibustered it. They filibustered that bill and one of the sticking points.
You know what we were arguing about. You know why, though.
Points in that bill was
qualified
immunity.
Correct.
But there
That's kind of a big one.
But let me tell you why why it was less important. If you go and look at the actual bills, the Justice Act and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, those bills overlap by about 75 to 80%. So what the resistance said is, because we could not get consent decrees, it doesn't matter that we agree on 75% of things. We couldn't get that one thing, and they decided to table the bill. We could have had police reforms if Democrats had decided to play ball with that.
But what they didn't want.
Oh, okay. So of course, this is what Malik does. Guys, to try to act like there's no racism angle here, this is what he does, sanitize it. It's the Democrats' fault why Trump is doing this now. Of course, I think it's very obvious, at least to me, what's going on here. And I agree with those that believe these kinds of things are a distraction, because it most certainly is. But there's a couple things going on there. Right? At a time where they're taking people's Medicaid away to give tax cuts to the rich, while they also give us tariffs, which is just a tax that harms you, the poorer you are. Trump wants to badly take this plane from Qatar, who sponsors terrorism. Trump doesn't care about law enforcement, safety. He doesn't care about anything. He cares about himself. And like I said before, Republicans' go-to move, the red meat, the distraction, is always racism. This is always the playbook. It's always the move they do to try to get more eyeballs. What's his name? Ben Shapiro just did it when he was talking about that they should pardon Derek Chauvin. Why do you think he does that? To get attention from the right-wingers. Why? Because they like this kind of stuff. They want to see more racism and cruelty. I mean, this is something that they just refuse to bring up. I don't know why, but just the way I picture it is just like, it's like giving candy to a baby. It's like, look how bad we treat black people. Look how bad we're treating brown people. Republicans eat it up. they soak in the racism and cruelty while their pockets get picked by some of the richest people in the world. In fact, one of them, Elon, is the richest man in the world. And what a surprise. He's a disgusting racist as well. And he does the same thing to gain their loyalty, to gain Republican loyalty. And I said this 1,000 times. You cannot have prominence or a high level of relevancy in the Republican Party without displaying a certain level of racism. I just, it's like a buffet. Like the thought of Trump having a riot, right? I believe Trump wants to end this because obviously he's trying to get people pissed off. He's trying to incite, I would believe, a riot. He would love it if that happened. That's a buffet of racist red meat if he has another BLM. Right? This is the red meat I'm talking about. Like, think about if Democrats did something like this to try to distract people. What would it be? Hey, we're going to give everyone, I don't know, minimum wage is going up to $30 an hour. We're going to tax the rich 90%. This would be a distraction. But to Republicans, the distractions, the promotional things they do to try to get attention is 99% of the time is just racism. Guys, let me know in the comments if I'm off on this kind of thinking.
Was something that looked cosmetic. And unfortunately, what we see with this rollback from this administration just falls in line with a lot of things that we saw post George Floyd. A lot of companies, a lot of celebrities, people putting up the black squares, all that jazz, knew it was performative then.
Virtue signaling.
Yes, it was, because at the end of the day, if you really want this change to be lasting, to be permanent, to be something that forces us to reimagine how we police in this country and whether or not there should be different layers of accountability, then you stick to your guns. So from this administration, I'm not surprised at all. Yeah. The worry, though, is, as you said, you know, what's the harm? The other thing is these things, I think they send a message to the public. When you have them in place, consent decrees, it allows the public to regain that trust. Like, let's be honest, from
that somebody is watching.
That somebody's watching. 2020
yeah.
especially was a bad year in terms of policing and what between Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, all of that. It was a continued thing. And if you're the police, what you do want is to reestablish public trust. The best way to do that is to tell people, hey, we're willing to hold ourselves accountable. You as a police officer, you have a lot of power. You want to hold everybody else accountable, but you don't want anybody else holding you accountable. That, to me, is a scary prospect, especially when you have people with that much power.
Right. And
so to me, it would have helped their reputation to keep this in place.
And I was just going to say really quickly, Trump ran on law and order. So what's wrong with a little order in police departments that are not in great shape? So, you know, to me, this is another veiled political message of just going against one side of the country in support of these messages.
Oh, and then
it's all veiled.
And then the bad optics of doing this right after this Ashley Babbitt settlement. Right.
But what you call rolling back, the administration sees as standing with their supporters. I mean, go back to the campaign, and you had a flood of police associations that endorsed Donald Trump. You had the FOP, you had associations in Michigan and Milwaukee, battleground states. You had the Police Benevolent Association right here in New York, which, far as we know, had never endorsed a candidate for president of the United States. And the way they see it, you write down numbers, I write down long quotes. I won't read the entire thing. But essentially, the executive director of the FOP said that consent decrees don't make any material positive difference in the relationship between police and communities. This is what they were looking for, and Donald Trump is responding to that.
But that might just be a talking point, because having somebody monitor a situation as drastic as, you know, police departments not complying with proper arrest procedures or not carrying out their job in a safe manner with the public. All these things that have gone on, it doesn't happen all the time. There are some bad apples. There are great police officers, and of course we should be supporting them, but there's just no harm in continuing monitoring something and making sure things stay on track because it went so badly off track.
Also, the public feels like they have somewhere to go if they feel like the system is breaking down. And so that is one of the things that consent decrees do. Maybe they don't make huge changes, but it does give the public a sense that they have somewhere to complain, not to the department itself, which they don't at that time trust. All right, Stacey Schneider, thank you so much.
So let me give you my rant here. Of course cops want that. Why wouldn't they want more power? Why wouldn't they want not to be watched? Of course. And if you're let's just call it a dirty cop, corrupt cop, of course they're going to support that. If you're one of the good cops, which I'm sure the majority of them are, they don't care that they're being watched and that there's oversight. They have no intentions of doing anything wrong. And put that to the side for a second. I think the message is very clear. Guys, and this is just pretty much from what I could remember. He came to office, about 4 months ago now. The first thing he did is went after DEI, calling people DEI hires. Being the bigot that he is, blaming the helicopter crash on a DEI hire. He wanted the celebrations of Black History Month at the White House to be removed. Any and all of them. And this one, I've said it 1,000 times, this one is just the most insane to me. He didn't want any pictures of people of color in the White House and demanded they be removed because his eyes just couldn't stand the sight. And just the visual of that guy, you should just really picture how embarrassing, how disturbing. Like, what was the staff thinking as they were removing these pictures? Like, again, could you imagine if Kamala got into office and did something like that? Republicans would be out there in their tiki torches. We know that's their preference. Removing pictures of like history of Jackie Robinson, like truly mentally ill stuff. Removing Black military generals, and the only reason they could come up with because they could possibly be a DEI hire and not qualified. Like, just outright racism. Guys, remove grants from the Smithsonian for the Black History exhibits. They just recently demoted FBI agents who kneeled in support of George Floyd, actually. This is just 4 months, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing stuff. And this is just Trump. This isn't including all the racist garbage from Republican online pundits like Scott Jennings, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Elon Musk, Laura Loomer, all these literally tons and tons of pieces of literal garbage right-wing pundits that spew this stuff out on a daily basis. Like I said, it's their go-to move. It's what the Republican base loves the most. They feed off this. It's the red meat for them. They love racism. And I hate to be that direct about it, but I mean, again, in the comments, let me know, am I wrong about this? Like, and guys, even the protection of Jewish kids, which I think we should protect Jewish kids, but nothing to say about Black kids? Are you living in an upside down world who have faced discrimination for centuries, still to this day on an ongoing basis? It's not like it comes in and out and flows. It's perpetual, and it sickens me, to be honest. How about sending Hispanic immigrants, in some cases U.S. citizens, to a brutal prison in El Salvador, talking about wants to send them to Sudan, Libya, and Gaza? I don't know why you're going to send a bunch of Hispanics to these countries. Like, oh, but recently took in white South Afrikaners, but no racism to see here, right? Republicans like to say, stop making everything about racism, always crying like a little. I don't want to curse anymore because someone in the comments, I think it was an older gentleman, didn't like that I curse, and I did feel bad. He said it in the most nicest way possible for me not to curse. So I'm going to try not to curse, but I am human. But like, they cry, stop making everything about racism. Everything's about racism. It's literally what all they do. Guys, look at the videos I have. I have 250 something videos. 90% of them is all just the racist garbage coming from the right wing on one show that I cover. At some point, I'm going to be making 2-3 videos, and I want to cover other people like PBD and all the other racist online pundits. I want to go after all of them, but it's going to take time for me to get there. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I just think it's just insane where this country's going. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Please leave a like, subscribe. It really helps the channel, really helps get the message out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.